This conference will now be
So we
recorded.
start the book of Bamidbar. Okay. And we're going to deal with a couple of things that often don't get dealt with in Bamidbar. But let's begin. Bamidbar in our stone Chumashim is on page 726. Okay. In English, it's called the Book of Numbers. Now, sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't get it right. Meaning, well, Shemot in English is called Exodus, right? It's really about Shemot, names, and we discussed that before. Bamidbar means in the wilderness, in the desert. In the desert. And it's also called the Book of Numbers in English, and also it is Chumash HaPekudim in Hebrew, the Book of Numbers. And Numbers is, there's many countings that go on in this book. And when we count, we recognize the individualized importance, right? That's what we do when we're counting the days now for Sphira. We're recognizing the importance and the impact that each day can and should have. And when we count, we also recognize the importance of every individual. Famously, we say the Torah was given in a midbar, in the desert, in the wilderness. And this book of Bamidbar is really about our travels through the midbar. And according to our sages, this book can actually be divided into 3 books, in which case there's not 5 books of the Torah, there are 7 books of the Torah. Bereshit, Genesis, Shemot, Names, Exodus, Vayikra, Leviticus, Bamidbar until 2 psukim of Bamidbar, Bamidbar after that, and Devarim. Bamidbar starts off with things being arranged properly. In our Parsha, we discussed the census and then the arrangement of the tribes as we would travel through the Midbar and the whole organization, the whole system that it was, how we would travel. And we were all in perfect formation on our way to the land of Israel. And then things went awry, and we have these 2 psukim in Parsha Ba'alotcha, which are set off with these strange upside down letters, making those two verses their own entity. And then we have the rest of the book, where we have Korach, we have the Meraglim, we have the rebellion, we have the spies, where things are not aligned properly. But let's begin with the good part, and that is where things are arranged properly. Why was the Torah given in a midbar, in the desert, in the wilderness? What does a desert, what does a wilderness represent?
Isolation.
Isolation, okay. And why would isolation from what?
From other non-wilderness entities.
Okay, so why might that be important to receive Torah?
This way they're not being influenced by
Okay,
alien cultures, and
okay,
they can concentrate on what's the most important.
okay. That's a nice thought that the two of you are putting together over here. That when we are meant to be a light unto nations, we are meant to be involved, we are meant to have a positive influence, but during this formative stage, we needed to be isolated. We need to be on our own in order to get to who we are, in order to receive that which makes us unique, which of course is Matan Torah on Sinai. Yes, Kathy.
I was just gonna say, because it was such an intimate time too. You need to be alone. You don't
Okay.
need the outside.
Okay.
This was a very
You need the
intimate
intimacy
time.
of being alone. Good,
It's
good.
interesting.
What else does a desert represent, or does a desert afford?
Well, you're dependent on.
Okay, good. We're out in the desert. There's not much food, not much water, not much protection, and therefore our holiday of Sukkot is all about those things that were provided for us. So therefore, we recognized that we were there in the loving embrace, the protective hands of God, and completely dependent upon God. We're all completely dependent upon God, but we have all these delusions because we have our salary coming in, we have our home, we have our this, we have our insurance, we have our portfolio, we have whatever we have. So we delude ourselves into thinking that we are self-sufficient. We're good. We've got it all covered.
Well,
But in the desert, one can't have any such delusions, and therefore it is in such an environment that one can accept and receive the Torah, because we recognize that we are, as we were having in our Monday night Chovos Halvavos, we recognize that we are completely dependent on Hashem. Good.
so perhaps we say our portfolio or our home, or because for whatever reason in this time and in this situation, Hashem is willing. Like how we was
Correct,
willing.
correct. We need to
Willing.
recognize that all these things that we have are gifts from God, and there's no guarantees, and therefore we need to make sure that our focus is on Hashem and not on all of these other things. Good. Also, I think certainly in our world we can imagine that a desert is a place where you don't have distractions. Right? You don't have distractions, but you're able to just focus. I actually, what was that, 1979, 80? I think it was 1980. My first year in Israel, I was there 79, 80 after graduating high school. And then Israel was still in control of the Sinai desert, right? King David might have started, Camp David might have started already, but I'm not sure. But so there was a Jewish agency 5-day camping trip out in the Sinai, which I went to. And it was amazing. It was beautiful in its stark, vast emptiness. And yeah, and well, there was no Wi-Fi at that time. There was no computers, right? But it was great to just have this solitude. One of the practices amongst Hasidim is hisbodedus, which is going off by yourself, having some time just by yourself. And we live in a world where, if you have a minute, you're taking out the phone to check this and check that and check this and check that. And I think Michael McIntyre is a pretty funny comedian. He has a whole thing like what do they do before cell phones? Oh, I can't leave the house, right? Because I have to get all of my pictures of the family for the past 20 years. I need that. Right? I need all of my bank account information. I need all of the stock market information. I need all, right? Yeah, it's crazy stuff. And the midbar is what affords us a time and a place and headspace, as we say, to not be bombarded. Really, that's what a Shabbos is the weekly midbar that we treat ourselves to, where we just power everything down except for ourselves and our family and our community, and we have that opportunity to just to not be bombarded from every direction. So the Torah was given to us in the Midbar. Midbar also, I think the Kutzker Rebbe says, it's a place of unending opportunities of what can be created, but with toil, but with work. And it takes effort. And that's how we view the world. The world is filled with these unending opportunities in a spiritual sense that we have, but it takes cultivation, right? It takes time, it takes effort, it takes work, and it takes opening ourselves up to it. I think in the midbar we're more open. We see the vastness. We're more open to the light, to the presence of Hashem. Let's go to something that I think is pretty interesting. Let's turn back for a moment to page 261. In our Parsha, we're going to come back to it soon. We're going to see the size, the numbers, the sizes of each of the tribes. And if you look back 261, or even let's go to 250, 259 for a moment. Okay, so let's look. This is in Vayigash. This is when Yosef has revealed his true identity, sent message back to his father Yaakov, and they're coming down to Egypt, right? And he and his grandsons came down to Egypt. Verse 8 and 259, Ve'ela Shemot b'nei Yisroel b'nei Mitzrayim. These are the names of the children of Israel who came down to Egypt, Yaakov and his sons, Reuven. So Reuven, let's just look quickly. Reuven has 4 children. Shimon has about 6 children. Levi has 3. Yehuda's got these 4, but 2 of them died. Issachar has 4, pretty much 3 to 4, 5, 6. Zevulun has 3. Okay, we turn the page. God is bigger. God has that 7. Asher has 3. Right. Let's see.
And a sister.
And a sister, yes. Right. And then 21, Binyamin. Wow. Binyamin has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Binyamin has 10 children. And Dan, actually the shortest pasuk in the Torah, Uvnei Dan, Chushim. And the children of Dan were Chushim. He had 1. So everyone is in the area of, let's say, 3 to 6, 7. Basically, that's the range. And then you have Binyamin, who has 10, and Dan, who has 1. And now this Chushim fellow is, there's a story, there's a backstory about Chushim. Chushim was, we would say, a special needs child. Chushim was deaf. Okay? Chushim was deaf or very, very, very hard of hearing. And this comes up later when Yaakov has died and they're bringing Yaakov out from Egypt to be buried in Marat HaMachpelah, bring him out from Egypt to Israel, to Hebron, to be buried there in Marat HaMachpelah, in the tomb of the patriarchs. And when they get there, Esav stood in the way. And Esav said, there are 6 slots here, Avraham and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, and 2 more slots. There are 2 sons of Yitzchak. I should be buried here. And they said, no, Yaakov needs to be buried here. I said, why? I'm the Bechor, Esav said. So they said, we've got the document of the sale of the Bechorah. You sold the Bechorah to Yaakov. Therefore, this is Yaakov's burial place. He said, where's the document? They said, it's back in Egypt. It's like when you go to the DMV, bring anything that you might possibly need. You go get your passports done. Anything that they might possibly ask for, just bring it. Well, it's back in Egypt. He said, well, produce the documents. So they sent Naphtali, who was a fleet of foot, to go back. Chushim is deaf. Chushim doesn't understand what's going on over here. Finally, he says, what's holding things up? And they explain to him, Esav saying this, we're saying that. Esav says a document, we're saying, okay, we'll get it. Naphtali, he just went off running to Egypt to bring back the document. Chushim says, my grandfather, Yaakov, is going to be lying here in disgrace, in an unburied state, until Naphtali goes to Egypt and then comes back, and I'm adding in, and probably then Esav will have another complaint, another claim. Absolutely not. He took a sword, chopped off the head of Esav. The head of Esav rolled, this medrash, rolled into Marat HaMachpelah, and Yaakov was buried there in Marat HaMachpelah. And the Bali Musar look at this story that we have the capacity to get used to things that we shouldn't get used to, right? And sometimes when you have the jolt, when with everyone else there was this gradual decline. He said this, we said that. He said this, we said that. Document Egypt. All right. They got used to the idea of Yaakov lying there, unburied. And that's how they were able to agree to Naphtali will go bring the document. But but Chushim did not. Okay. That's a backstory of Chushim.
So it wasn't like direct, it still wasn't like direct self-defense or anything else.
Okay.
So
yes.
was that
Chushim is not
premeditated killing? Was that justified?
Yes, I hear your question. It is view. We are backers of Chushim on this. He is not castigated for this, but this is considered to be the proper thing. I hear that. Yes.
Can I just ask you one thing that occurred to me when you're reading these list of children? There's one sister that's mentioned. Everybody must have had a sister. There must have been women. Why is this sister mentioned?
Okay, so Dinah. Serach.
Yeah.
Serach. Okay, so Serach is mentioned, I believe, because she was born, I think, Bein Hachomot. I have to remember. Serach Bas Asher. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. That it's a good question. I would need to look into that.
Yeah.
Dinah, what we know was a unique situation, but Serach, yeah, right, and right, there were twin sisters born or other sisters born, right, and according to one opinion, that's who the tribes married. They married their half sisters, right, from a different mother, albeit from the same father at that point. Yeah. Yes.
Was she the person that she did something extraordinary?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what it was. She was the one that remembered Hashem's name, so that when Moshe said the name or the people, she reminded them of something.
I'm drawing a blank. It could very well be. I'm drawing a blank.
So there were actually more children because of the
correct
sisters.
Now let's look in Bamidbar at the size of the different tribes. Right here we are, 210 years later. Okay, so let's look on page 729. Right, how big was the tribe of Reuven? Right, verse 20, 21, 46,500. Okay. The size of Shimon, 59,300. You know what I'm saying? Over a course of 210 years, there's going to be some discrepancies here, right? right? I'm always amazed that my in-laws, they should both be well, right? So my mother-in-law was one of three. Natalie's grandmother was one of three sisters. Two of them never had children. She had two daughters, my mother-in-law and a sister. And the sister, I think, had one or two children and had, maybe, my mother-in-law, my in-laws had five. Natalie's one of five. And out from that five came grandchildren and great-grandchildren, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, probably close to 100 at this point. I don't know exact number, right? It's amazing what can come and the differences. So let's see. Ruvain, 46,500. Shimon, 59,300. Gad, 45,650. Judah, 74,600. Okay, so our range is like 40,000 to 74,000.
I'm
Good.
very amazed how it's always not like 501 or 504.
Yeah, that is interesting. That is interesting.
I mean,
Yisachar, 54,400. Zvulun, 57,400. Ephraim, now, that was Yosef split in two, right? So we would expect them to be a little bit less, and they are the lower side. Ephraim and Menashe, that's one generation in already, right? So one less generation for them to be multiplying. 40,500 and Menashe 32,200, altogether 70 something thousand, again within our range, the upper level. Binyamin, whoa, here comes Binyamin with the 10 kids, right? Where's Binyamin going to be at? 35,400. Okay, Dan with his one special need child. Where's he at? 62,700.
so Hushim must have had a lot of kids.
Yeah. So again, Binyamin with his 10, 35,000 and change. Dan with his one, 62,700. Right? And the expression we're familiar with, Mensch tracht und gut lacht. Man thinks, plans, and God laughs.
So even,
Right?
for example, you have what, 6 siblings?
I've got, it's a little complicated. I had 4 children. I had a sister who passed away, and then my father remarried. I had 2 more siblings, and then my brother passed away. So at this point, we're at 5. Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of children between all of them.
Yeah.
Right?
But here you've got 10, 35. You've got one special need, 62,000. Right? And we make our efforts, we make our predictions, we think, but ultimately, what Hashem has planned, right? Who would have thought that out from this one Chushin would come this? Right? Imagine Dan and Binyamin getting together on a Friday night dinner. And there's Binyamin with his 10 sons, and there's Chushim sitting there, probably not saying a word, right? Not really hearing what's going on, right? And we never know. We never know what comes from where and where it comes from. And we see a similar thing a little later on in the Parsha. If you go to 742, so Levi was not counted. The tribe of Levi was not counted. Okay? Everyone else was counted from age 20 and up. Levi was
743.
742, 743.
I think it was men, but they cut it off at the age of 65.
Oh, at 60. Yeah, 20 to 60. Okay. Levi is counted from 1 month. Levi is counted from 1 month old. And let's see the tally of Levi on page 743. Right? Verse 43. Every firstborn male, according to the number of the names, from 1 to 8, according to the numbers, was 22,273. So Levi is incredibly small, even though, right, if you ask an actuary, right, if we're counting from age 20 to 60, you get this amount. How much should you add if you're counting from age 1 month until age 60, right? And it should be that much greater, yet it's that much less. Now, add to this the fact that Levi, the tribe of Levi, had a very unique situation during those 210 years. What was Levi's unique situation in Egypt?
They didn't have to.
They were priests.
They were the priests, and therefore they were not working, right? Moshe and Aaron are able to be walking around. Why aren't they working? They're from the tribe of Levi, right? Moshe and Aaron are not told go back to work. It's like, why are you stopping the people from working? See, here we have a pool of a greater amount, age 1 month, not age 20, not being subjugated, and they are minuscule compared to everyone else.
Maybe because they were Kohanim and they had a special role to play, and maybe that was a smaller, I don't want to say more exclusive group, but they had a different kind of.
Okay.
They weren't going to war. They weren't. I mean, if there was.
But at this point,
Yeah.
right? So that's going forward. Ramban asked this question, and he says, well, maybe since they were in charge of the holy areas, and if you overstep in there, as we'll soon see at the end of the Parsha, if you overstep over there, they would die, right? But they hadn't started that yet, right? So on the contrary, they're not out there hauling bricks with all of the occupational hazards that go along with that. Yeah, Cheryl.
We're just reading about the Kohanim, and that's from the Levites, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all the restrictions they had.
Yes,
And
but
they
not
couldn't
yet.
just marry anybody, and they just had very high. They had to perform in certain ways.
Yes, but not yet.
Yeah.
Oh, rather than not subjugated.
It seems that in Egypt, that the same way that when Yosef was collecting was during the famine years, and everyone was right. So the priests were being supported by the state. They were given Egyptian, and they were given special privileges and special accommodations. So it seems that was even amongst the Jews, that their spiritual leaders were given special accommodations. That's what it seems.
Not yet,
I'm sorry?
but their spiritual leadership was not yet.
So the role of the spiritual leadership was not yet. But it's right, it's the actual implementation of it was not yet. But Levi was always the spiritual leaders. Out from them came Moshe. Out from them came Aaron. Levi was the spiritual leaders. An interesting idea. Why is it that from the get-go Levi was that? So Levi played a pivotal role in the shalom bayis of his household, right? Reuven, Shimon, the first two to be born, right? So the names indicated, right? Reuven and Shimon, God has heard my cries, right? Because Leah, the mother, was feeling sort of second class to Rachel. Levi, who's named Levi, Hapam Yelavanishi. Now my husband will come to me. Now there'll be full shalom bias. Now there'll be a healthier relationship between myself and my husband because I've done my share, right? So Levi, I hear what you're asking, right? But that's our understanding, right? At what role were they playing? I'm not sure. At that point, they were not really playing a role, but they were. Out from them came a Moshe, came an Aaron, and also out from them, right? It was in full force by the Chet HaEgel, by the sin of the golden calf, right? Where they were the one tribe that did not participate in that.
Perhaps initially Yosef, since they were isolated in Goshen, and so that kind of gave some leeway for spiritual development.
Yeah.
And then once Moshe was chosen and was Pharaoh's son, maybe Moshe kind of stepped in and said, well, this tribe, we minister or something.
Could be. But once again, we see the same idea. Oh, so Ramban says that because they were not subjugated and enslaved, the pasuk said, Hashem said, right, Kain yirbeh v'chein yifrotz. The more that they will subjugate them, the more they will multiply. Right, Paro, you think that by subjugating them, you're going to constrict them and constrain them and minimize them? On the opposite, they will. The more you subjugate them, the more they will breed, right? Propagate. The more children. And we learn that according to Medrash, that the mothers would give birth to 6 at a time. Not for Levi. Levi wasn't subject to the subjugation. Therefore, Levi didn't have the bracha. Again, we live in a very, this God-driven world is not what we'd often expect. And we need to be open, wide to all that which comes. And with Shavuos coming up, we're going to read the book of Rus. And we'll hear about Boaz marrying Rus. And then having and her getting pregnant. He died almost right afterwards. And out from that came King David and the whole dynasty of royalty that we have. There's a backstory of Boaz. Boaz had, according to the Medrash, had 30 sons and 30 daughters.
No.
Right? Not all from one wife, I imagine. Right? But 30 sons and 30 daughters. And he would make these tremendous celebrations for the engagement of each of them and for the marriage of each of them. So he had 120 great celebration parties. There was one person that he didn't invite, Manoach. Who's Manoach? We know Manoach later on as the father of, he was the husband of Eshet Manoach, the wife of Manoach, and that's who the angel came to and told them that there's going to be a son born to you. He will be a Nazarite from Shimshon, right? The father of Shimshon. Now, why didn't he invite Manoach? Right? And this was held against him. And according to Medrash, all 60 children died. All 60 children died. He didn't invite Manoach. The Marsha says, why didn't he invite Manoach? Right? He was wrong but what he was thinking is, then it was very, very transitional. If I invite you to my simcha, then you have to invite me to your simcha, right? Transactional, thank you. Transactional, right? And therefore, he didn't want to put Manoach into a very uncomfortable situation of being on the receiving end, but not being able to reciprocate.
So,
Right? He was wrong. He was wrong in doing this. Right? He was wrong in doing this. But let's pause for a moment and think, here's Boaz with 60 kids. And here's Manoach with none. And we freeze at that point. We'd say, wow, what's going to come from Boaz will be incredible. What's going to come from Manoach? Garnished. Nothing. And then we go forward a little bit. We go forward a little bit. And oh boy, now we have Boaz, no kids. Manoach, Shimshon. Freeze right there. What's going to be from Boaz? Nothing. What's going to be from Manoach? One of the Shoftim, one of the great leaders of Israel. Complicated fellow, but a Navi, keep in mind. So therefore, right, we think, we go to Samson's gym, right? Samson, right? It was the Ruach Hashem, it was the Spirit of God that made him strong. He might have been the 98-pound weakling when you took a look at him, right? But freeze our frame at that point. From Boaz, nothing. From Manoach, one of the Shoftim of Israel. Go forward. After the death of his children, after the death of his wife or wives, he marries Rus. And she gets pregnant. And she has a child. Ovad, who has a child. Yishai, who has a child. David, King David. Menstracht, Gutlacht. There is this master plan by the master coordinator, and we think we can figure it out. Famously, Rabbi Sachs says very beautifully, when Moshe says to Hashem, what name should I tell the people of you, God, who appeared to me? Eyeh asher eyeh. I will be that which I will be. You will not be able to predict, right? This is the God world, and we work our way through the Midbar over here, trying to do as much as we can, trying to do as good as we can, and not knowing where, what, how, this, right? It is the God world.
Because certainly that was a righteous motive. And Hashem says, no, I mean, I can see how someone might
so how
feel
careful we need to be
of not being included, but
how careful we need to be, right? We find by the birth of Shmuel to Chana, there was another wife that Elkanah had, Penina, and Penina would make Chana feel bad about not having children, Laman Ha'arima, in order to get her to daven, and it worked. But that was, and that's something. I want to talk about the very last pasuk in the Parsha, on page 746, the last few psukim. This is after now we have set aside the role of the Leviim and the role of the Kohanim and the traveling, the transporting of the Mishkan. And that was done. The Kohanim would come and would cover everything up properly, all the Kalim, and then the Leviim would do the carrying. And Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron saying, Al tachritu et shevet mishpechot kahatim mitoch Leviim. Do not let the tribe of Kahat be cut off amongst the Levites. Why Kahat? Kahat of the three sons of Levi, They were all doing the transporting of the Mishkan. Kahat was the one who would be carrying the actual kalim, not the curtains, not the posts, but the actual kalim, the table, the altar, the menorah, and the aron, and the ark. So therefore, this, be careful. This shall you do, so they shall live and not die when they approach the Holy of Holies, which is where they're going to be taking the Aron out, the ark out. Aaron and his son shall come and assign them, every man to his work and his burden. They shall not come and look as the holy is inserted, lest they die. Mesilat Yesharim, which is from the Ramchal, the path of the just, which is the classic Musar Sefer. So he speaks about Mishkal. Just one second. He talks about Mishkal HaChasidut. Mishkal, they say assessing piety, but assessing is a good word, but I will say Mishkal is weighing. You have to weigh things. You have to be so careful. Something that you think might be a great act might actually not be the right thing for you to be doing. Right? In other words, you want to be a chassid, right? The classic example. Oh, I've got to run to shul to get there on time. And you knock over, two older people on the way, right? You did not weigh your piety in the proper manner. And very often, right, something that comes up here, right? Two people have yahrzeit. Each of them wants to honor their late parent. Each of them wants to be the chazan, to lead the services. When you have yahrzeit, it is a tremendous merit when you lead for the parent in heaven that their child is leading the services. So we both want to lead the services. Weigh the piety. Maybe it'd be a greater honor for the deceased parent in heaven that you said, let someone else lead. I'll say Kaddish, but let someone else lead. Mishkal, you've got to weigh the Chasidut. You want to, right? Boaz weighed it incorrectly. I don't want to make him feel bad. I remember when it was interesting, when we first moved to Israel, and we were married already a year and a half, and we didn't have children yet. And so Natalie was sometimes go out and sit in the park, and, right, where the other mothers were with their children, and mothers would stop talking about their children, right, in front of Natalie, which on one hand they were trying to be very sensitive, but that made her feel worse. Right? Not too soon after our Tzvi was born, Baruch Hashem, right? But you have to be so careful to weigh things. And the Mesilas Yesharim at the end of chapter 20, he says as follows. Just one second. He says, it is obvious that a person needs to run to do a mitzvah, to try to be, I want to be the one to do the mitzvah. You jump up, you're on the bus, and all the person gets on, you jump up and give this seat, right? Have that alacrity. But sometimes, he says, it could lead to meriva. It could lead to problems, disputes. And the mitzvah will become disgraced. And a chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name, will come about from that which you try to give honor. Right? And in such a case, he says, the chassid needs to put the mitzvah aside and not run after it. And that's what we find, he says, by the Leviim. quoting our pasuk. The Medrash says, "Mipnei shayu yodim." They knew, "Shekol mi shetoin ba'aron." Whoever carries the aron, you're carrying the ark, right? 4 Leviim would get to carry the ark. What a privilege! What an honor! What a mitzvah that you're the one carrying the ark. Lefi shescharo meruba. And because that was considered the holiest, meinichin et hashulchan. They would walk away from carrying the shulchan, the table. V'ha-menorah, from carrying the menorah. V'ha-mizbechot, and the altars. They're all running. La'aron, they're all running to the ark to receive that reward. Each one saying, Ani toenkan, I'm going to carry here. I'm going to carry here. Umitoch kacha yinogin kalut rosh. That led to a lack of reverence. Vaita shchina pogat bahem. That's what it's saying. V'lo yamutu, lest they'll die. Right? So here you are trying to be such a chassid. You always have to weigh it. And he gives a couple of examples that we have in the Navi. Well, one in the Navi, one in the Talmud. Right? After Rosh Hashanah, we have a fast day. What's the fast day? Tzom Gedalia. Who was Gedalia? Gedalia was appointed by Bavel to be the head of the Jewish community remaining in Israel, in Jerusalem, after the Churban, after the destruction of the first temple. He was the Babylonian appointed leader there. And then the nations around didn't want there to be any Jewish presence at all. So they wanted to assassinate this Gedalia. They sent a wayward Jew by the name of Yishmael to go assassinate Gedalia. Gedalia was warned, Yishmael's coming to kill you. Gedalia was chassid, was so pious. I'm not going to accept any lashon hara, any bad mouthing of anyone. Yishmael comes, Gedalia goes to give him a hug, Yishmael gives him a knife into his back, Gedalia is dead. When it comes to lashon hara, we're not allowed to accept it as absolute truth. He couldn't say, kill Gedalia, kill Yishmael on the way here, he's coming to kill me. But he should have been concerned that it might be and taken necessary safeguards. He didn't. That's one case of where a person that he, and the pasuk says, right? Umagar, what did he cause? He caused his death and our being scattered around. And it says over there, at kol pigrei hanashim asher hika biyad Gedaliah. The Navi says, all the people that were killed through the hand of Gedaliah, he's held responsible. That is the Mishkal.
Wow.
And he says, by the second Beit HaMikdash, so we know the story of Bar Kamsa, who was angry, and he came, and he badmouthed. He wasn't invited. He was kicked out, and the rabbis didn't defend him, didn't protest on his behalf. And he went, and he and he badmouthed us to the Caesar, saying, the Jews, they don't respect you at all. They won't accept your sacrifice. Yeah, let's try it. See what will happen. Sent the sacrifice, and what did he do? He put a little blemish onto that sacrifice, right? And what happened, right? The sages said, in this case, we'll need to bring the sacrifice. And Zechariah ben Avkulos, right, said, right, people will think this will start a precedent that you're allowed to bring a blemished animal onto the altar. They said, okay, so then let's kill the messenger. And that way no word will get back. People will say, Zechariah again said, people will say that if you blemish an animal, you get a death penalty. So therefore, they couldn't take these steps to stop what was about to happen. And he went off. He went back and said they didn't offer it. And that led to the Chorban. And Rabbi Yochanan said it was the humility of Rabbi Zechariah that led to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, of the temple.
That's quite a story.
We need to weigh different things. Rabbi Yisroel Salanter, who was famous, right, for his musar and the way he treated people. A number of stories of Yisroel Salanter that he went to a house for a Friday night meal with one of his talmidim, and the Talmud was so happy to show his Rebbe the beautiful Friday night meal with the zemiros, the songs, and the divrei Torah. And his Rebbe said, next course. And they sped through the meal, right? And his Talmud was so crestfallen. He said, Rebbe, tell me please, what's wrong with my Suda? What's wrong with the way I had my Shabbos meal? And he said, come with me. He went into the kitchen where there was an almana, a widow, who was working there, right? And Yisroel said to the widow, right, I'm sorry for making you work so fast. I'm sorry. I know it's much faster than usual. I'm so sorry. And she started to cry and she said, thank you, Rebbe. Right? It's so late by the time I finish normally, by the time I get home to my children, it's impossible. Thank you. He said to his Talmud, the Mishkal HaChasidus. He had a kapeda. He had something he was very, very careful about. He was going for the matzah baking. And we bake the matzah. I have this stringency, that stringency, that stringency. So he went there and he said, my chumrah is, my stringency is, and then who was doing the pounding of the dough and the hitting it with those spikes to make sure it wouldn't rise. He had to constantly be doing that. Who was doing that? Usually it was poor people who were doing that. And he said, my stringency, my chumrah by the matzah is no one should yell at any of the people that they're not doing it fast enough. That's my stringency. And Rav Ruderman Zatzal was a Shiva of Bnei Yisroel when I was there, my early years when I was there. See, he told a story that made such an impression on him when he was a young boy in Europe. And on Hoshana Rabbah, the last day of Chol Hamoed Sukkos, there the Chazan wears a kittel because it's considered like the last stage of the judgment. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Hoshana Rabbah. And the Gabbai forgot to bring a kittel to shul. And people started to berate this Gabbai. What's the matter with you? Don't you know we need a kittel, right? And as a little kid, it struck him that wearing a kittel on Hoshana Rabbah, that is a beautiful custom, a beautiful stringency. Humiliating a person, that is like killing a person. And sometimes we get caught up in something, and we have to have this mishkal ha-chasidus. We have to make sure that we're weighing things properly.
Well,
we have to keep that in mind.
Like in Boaz's case, you could say, oh, it would make someone feel really left out if they weren't invited. But on the other hand, you could say they might come and be delighted to be included, but then reluctantly have all this other ambivalence of what am I going to do? What am I going to do later?
Yeah.
So that's a judgment call. You could not know which way was right.
And that's how.
I mean, there's some that are more clear cut, but
yes.
How would you even discern that?
Yes. Life's not easy. Life is not easy, and we have to. As long as we are carefully weighing both sides. And then we come, sometimes a person might need to ask someone else, right? Sometimes he might need to get some guidance, not to feel that I'll figure it out. I know it, right? Person needs to get some guidance also, to have the humility to seek counsel from others also. Yeah, life, when we're dealing with people and their feelings, right? Life is complicated, and we have to weigh things. Here we have the Levium, right, wanting to do this holy act, but can overdo it a little bit. Yeah, Mishkal HaChasidus. Yeah.
So Mishkal means what?
The weight, the weighing,
Okay.
the weighing of Hasidus. Yes, Dove. Sorry?
Yeah,
Dove, please speak up. Your voice isn't carrying well.
well, when Gedalia was killed, was that the time when there was no prophets to intervene?
No, there were prophets. At the end of the first Beis Hamikdash, we had prophecy until the start of the second Beis Hamikdash.
Well, it's interesting that.
So there were still Nevi'im.
But
Yeah.
the prophet didn't actually step up and say, you know what, this guy's armed.
Yeah.
Because the prophet would be, that's.
Yeah. Sometimes you might need to ask the prophet, or sometimes you don't need to ask the prophet.